Greetings, friends. Gemini Brett here with a little pop-up storytelling on a Sunday. Today is July 14th, 2024. If you're into that whole Gregorian trip. But the question is, when will we know peace? And of course, I'm inspired to respond to one of these main events in the craziness that is today, and specifically yesterday, this assassination attempt. We might look at that chart with Donald Trump and maybe look at that chart with Joe Biden. But mostly I want to speak about some events that are happening in the sky that are inspiring some storytelling, including the strange trip that assassination is like I nation. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, let's get into it. And I shouldn't giggle at all. These are very serious matters, but on another level, like, how else can we keep it light enough to survive in these times where everywhere we look, it is terrifying? My daughter, Maya, had her first lunar return yesterday, which means that she's 4 weeks old today, and very easy to feel challenged as to why were we insane enough to bring a child into this insane world. And of course, the answer is that if we bring in magical beings and do our best to raise them right, perhaps there will be a time when humanity is not all fight. There's plenty of people, and loving, awesome people, who hopefully are asked to take a really good look into their heart right now, because maybe they wish that somebody yesterday had been struck. And this image just of hatred and vitriol that's just tearing people apart, it's nothing new, but so much divide and conquer, and the way that that's been ramped up over the recent years, especially. Do you prefer Coke or do you prefer Pepsi? Do you know that they're both full of corn syrup? But you need the lesser of two evils and all that. And I mean, so it's overwhelming to consider the amount of death that's happening in the world. And I mean, I don't think I've ever been alive without some kind of war happening. And it's very much happening now. And how do we turn a blind eye to that? How can we allow ourselves to look and keep our hearts open? We're living in super tricky times, and I know you're feeling it as much as I do. And our feelings can be overwhelming, right? So the question here is, when will we know peace? And that I can't say, but I want to bring you to a star who was occulted by the moon yesterday, by the first quarter moon at that. And we'll have a couple other storytelling adventures along the way. Let me just clean up some images here before I share the screen. Well, so one of the kind of main astronomical events that astrologers are talking about now is the conjunction of Mars and Uranus, which will happen on Monday, on the day of the moon tomorrow, July 15th. And at the zodiac degree that currently hosts the projection of the so-called demon star Al-Gol. And I spoke about this some last week on StarryTelling, and spoke about Medusa and Pegasus, and hopefully helped some of you reframe the Perseus story. I want to at least just show that, in kind of scary astrology, there's pretty strong alignments of that happening with the chart of President Trump, who has a midheaven at 24 degrees and 18 minutes of tropical Taurus. Now, when Trump was born in 1946, Al-Gol then lived at 25, 24 Taurus. And, well, I just want to look to see how close Al-Gol was to its culmination at that time. And the answer would be found right here, a couple. Wait, what? 272. That's hard to fathom. Something's weird. All right, so we're going to go to a different stage. Let's bring ourselves to New York. 6:14 during a lunar eclipse, June 14th, 1946, 10:54 a.m. All right. So this is Al-Gol, who is the eye of Medusa, held by Perseus. Anyone from Astrological software is watching this, the azimuths for Al-Gol in this table are entirely incorrect when this thing is telling me that Al-Gol is almost due west, when the truth is the star is much more south and culminating in the degree that that star projects to is kind of what we're talking about when we're looking at planetary conjunctions. So the star Al-Gol, the eye of Medusa in the heavens. And I encourage you to listen to my recent StarryTelling podcast. At the end of the interview I had with Amala about astroherbalism, where I spoke some about this star. And the reason why is today, let me go to now. Now I'm actually going to bring this back to California, where I reside, because I want to show you something very powerful that happened to the sky yesterday. But first, let's go to tomorrow's Mars-Uranus conjunction at that star. So let me supersize the planets, and you'll see how close, thanks to Stellarium astronomy software here, Mars and Uranus are at the time of their conjunction. Now, they're very far away from Al-Gol, but one of the ways that we play with the stars is through longitudinal projection, right? Like if I look here and we can see that Queens, New York is at 73 west 52 in terrestrial longitude. Like, what does that mean? We're saying it's 73 degrees west of the prime meridian, right? And that's the same thing with like zodiac degrees, celestial longitude. We'll talk about how far along the track of the sun, the ecliptic, the heart of the zodiac, the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship, that of matter and spirit, how far from zero Aries, which is where the ecliptic norths across the equator, this intersection of the plane of year and plane of day. And so when we look at longitudes in that regard, then here's this powerful star, this Bohemian star, the diamond star, Al-Gol, who lives at these same degrees where Mars and Uranus will conjoin tomorrow. So I have this chart cast for Butler, Pennsylvania, at the time of this assassination attempt yesterday. And you can see just how close Mars is to Donald Trump's midheaven, which is a place of career, of honors, legacy of our public appearance. And here we are, public appearance. And, I mean, let's just use this language. The god of war comes there, and, here's this assassination attempt, right? Shot in the ear, which is part of the head, yes. Now, Mars gets there every 2 years, so why now? Frankly, I thought because of an eclipse happening, that might happen 8 years ago almost. 7 years ago. But perhaps because Mars and Uranus, right? And Uranus, accidents, shock, the lightning strikes out of nowhere, you see. And perhaps also because of this alignment with Al-Gol, the star that has a really bad reputation, including that events on that star's degree come with decapitation. Now, interestingly, and you know what, I'm going to turn this now. Well, let me just make another chart. And let's go to the exact Mars-Uranus conjunction. And I'm going to relocate that chart to Washington, D.C., which we often do for mundane matters, which I prefer not to speak about, frankly, in astrology. But here's that conjunction, and let me show you where Al-Gol resides in ecliptic longitudes today. And the answer is 2630 tropical Taurus. And so this Mars-Uranus conjunction is within 11 arc minutes of that star. The last time this happened was 1942. Let me go look to that time real quick. This is the last time that Uranus aligned with that star. At that time, Saturn as well. And Mars wouldn't quite catch up to Uranus as close. Their conjunction was 3 degrees away from Al-Gol. Or sorry, no, they weren't. They were 1.5 degrees from Al-Gol. This is Alcyone, which is one of the stars of the Pleiades, which then resided in tropical Taurus and is now since processed into tropical Gemini. So, no need to look at this against Donald Trump's chart, but I mean, I want you to imagine what was happening in 1942 on the world stage. One of the things that this led to, wasn't born according to what is known, was the Manhattan Project, right? But where did that come out of? And why would that look like Mars and Uranus and Al-Gol? Well, Mars, who is not only war, but there you go. And Uranus is not only technology, but there you go. And Al-Gol is not only evil or demonic or something, but there you go. And it's amazing that that connection back then was happening during, the gnarliest times of war and on the world stage. Yeah. Amazing beings came out of it. I wanted to look recently. There's some cats like Lou Reed, for example, and many others, and I encourage you to take a look. But this is a little bit too literal, and many astrologers, I was not one of them, at least out loud, had been talking about this current Mars-Uranus conjunction at Al-Gol, and also looking to how closely it aligned to Donald Trump's midheaven, and even predicting such a terrible event as an assassination attempt. And hopefully, regardless of what you think of this presidential candidate, that's not something you would ever wish for. And I really encourage y'all to check in with your heart and see where you are with that. So let me put this back on the screen, and we're going to look at one other chart as well. So here's this Mars-Uranus Al-Gol at Trump's midheaven yesterday. This is tomorrow when the moon will be in Scorpio. I want to also go and show you a moment that was very close to the time of the assassination attempt. But before I do, let me put Biden's chart here, and we'll look at this coming Mars-Uranus conjunction at Al-Gol. which you can see for Joe Biden will be in the 6th house of health and illness, very strongly aligned to the sun and other 12th house planets here, mostly Sun and Venus. And, perhaps this is an image of a different type of quote unquote decapitation, right? I will say Muhammad Ali is one chart who's I know was born with Uranus at this Al-Gol degree. And, Muhammad Ali, of course, experienced from too many punches, it's well suspected, too many concussions, the onset of dementia, Alzheimer's, right? And I'm not saying that that's what Uranus at Al-Gol equals, but I'm also can't ignore the kind of literal expression of what some astrologies have said about that star and about Uranus, who can represent nervous system. And in traditional astrology, we won't really look at planets that are opposite, so-called fixed stars, but I would suggest that when a planet is being transited, like the sun being transited by Mars and Uranus, so some light is going to come out of hidden places here, that when these planets align to a star, a powerful star like Algol, like the nature of that star is also going to be pulled through. Okay, so I want to get away from these charts and speak more about a specific event, but let's at least honor like how literal the astrology can be sometimes. So let me go to today. This is right now as I'm sharing with you. I'm actually going to relocate this to where I reside in Richmond, California, because last night I would have had a good view of a pretty powerful happening had the clouds allowed, and they did not. And I was out there looking, especially because my daughter was born with her moon very close to this degree. Again, yesterday was Maya's first lunar return. You can see at this time, I just rewound, this is 3:48:50 p.m. And by the way, the assassination attempt was shortly before that time. It was 6:11 p.m. in Butler, Pennsylvania. So that would have been 3:11 p.m. here in Richmond, California, where I reside. And so this is maybe around the time where I really had set some intention to go out and connect with the moon, and I did. But also when Anna and I were on a walk with our baby, sleeping on mama's chest, wrapped up, and I'm looking at some YouTube footage of this assassination attempt and scoffing at some headlines like President Trump falls because of loud noises at his rally. Right? I mean, the level of avoidance of news by those who call themselves news people is just absolutely tragic in our day and age. And I should have worn my favorite shirt, which says, "Make Orwell fiction again." But we really need to put our hands on our hearts and take the gags off of our mouths and look at this time of extreme censorship. And the crazy thing is, people that I know and like people who I know have wisdom in their heart have been rooting for it over the past years. And it is just terrifying. And there is so much like, you're either drinking Coke or you're drinking Pepsi. And if you like the Pepsi, you better hate the Coke drinkers. And they are all of these terrible things. And if you like the Coke, you better hate the Pepsi people. And they are all of these terrible things. And divide and conquer and divide and conquer. The wizard's trick to just think that you're not meant to love your neighbor, but the opposite of that. So we're going to look at this more archetypally here and constellationally and get into some storytelling and some StarryTelling together. Yesterday's first quarter moon was very close to a powerful star. And actually here in the United States, that star, Spica or Spica, in other places known in India known as Chitra, was occulted. So let me bring you there, and we're going to speak about that star a bit. You know, I think, though, first I'm going to rewind time. And let's look at the new moon, which was in Cancer this month. And I'm talking tropical Cancer there, because when we look to this in the constellations, you might say, well, why the heck is that Cancer? So this is July 5th, 2024, 3:57 p.m. Let me go there first. So 10 days ago, 10 days from tomorrow's Mars-Uranus conjunction. Okay, so here's moon and sun meeting. Maybe I'll supersize them as well. How amazing that in Earth sky, moon and sun appear to be the same size, and therefore, of course, we can experience total occultations of the sun, the total solar eclipse. That certainly did not happen in this lunation. In fact, we're the furthest thing from it, because in current time, the moon's north node is in Aries, and her south node is in Libra. And therefore, she's furthest from the sun's path in between, in other words, Cancer and also Capricorn. So the moon, for the new moon this month, was extremely out of bounds. That's looking at her declination here at 27 degrees and 22 and a half minutes. That exceeds the tilt angle of Earth, which is about 23 and a half degrees, by almost 4 degrees. That's an extremely out of bounds moon at the time of this moon-sun conjunction. So just importantly, know that conjunctions in the chart like this do not mean an occultation. We need for eclipse to happen for moon and sun to share not only the same longitude, right, which we astrologers know as zodiac degree, but also the same latitude, which is the distance from the sun's path. The sun's latitude is therefore always 0, right? It's traveling on the ecliptic, the path of the sun. At the latitude of the moon at this time is 5 degrees, which is just about as far as she strays from the path of the sun. Her crossing points of the sun's path are called the lunar nodes. And so when moon is square the node, she's as far away as possible. Like, this is the furthest thing from a solar eclipse in a new moon that we will experience this year. And by the way, some astrologers, Carl Payne Toby was one who really pushed for this, and Nadine Bennett, who was a student of Carl's for a long time, has kind of kept this tradition going and really raises flags at these times of the year when we have the new moons and the full moons square to the nodes. They, by some, are called the moon wobble times. And though they're the furthest thing from eclipse, what it means is we're now halfway between the eclipse season in Aries and the coming eclipse season in Libra, right? Cancer, halfway between Aries and Libra. We'll be speaking about that a little bit as we move along too. And I've seen it as it's at this time when the kind of baton, the dragon relay, the baton is passed from the dragons of the recent eclipse to the dragons of the eclipse to come. And some researchers have found that these moon wobble times, when we are actually furthest from eclipses, that they act very much like eclipses. And by the way, one of the old eclipse images was the death of the king, right? Okay, so I want to show you about this new moon's alignment to a very powerful star, another one of the so-called Bohemian stars, or 15 magical stars of Mercury, the brightest star in our sky, and that's the star Sirius. And you can see here only 1 arc minute away. All right. Now, however, when we go look to where Sirius is in the sky, it's very far away because latitude also matters, okay? And Sirius, you can see here in Stellarium, is a full almost 40 degrees south of the ecliptic, 39 and 37 minutes, 39 degrees, 37 minutes, okay? So like the sun at this time was almost 40 degrees away, and the moon was almost 45 degrees away. But through longitudinal projection, you know, that's this line that I'm showing here. That's 15 degrees tropical Cancer. Now, you might wonder, why in the heck is 15 degrees tropical Cancer here in the midst of the twins? And the answer is the tropical zodiac is not constellational. It never has been. It was more aligned to the constellations back in the day, but the constellations that the sun, and for the most part, because our solar system is relatively flat, the planets travel along. They do not divide the sky equally to 12 slices. So you can never have a 12 sign zodiac of equal 30-degree signs that align to the constellations. That's the source of a lot of kind of straw hat arguments by rational astronomers in our day and age, and also kind of the root of the, well, Ophiuchus is a 13th sign crime, as I call it, but design, let me say that. Anyway, you'll see the Cancer glyph here in Stellarium astronomy software that I'm circling today in our day and age, and this is like a once in a 26,000 year event, and it's a big deal. This Cancer solstice is on the club of Orion, on the hand of the high man. You know, there's other better images than some hunter who's chasing the Pleiades through the sky. Unfortunately, they're protected by this bull. In the myths, like, well, in Babylon and the Mulapin, the stars that we now call Orion were known as the true shepherd of Anu. There you go, right? So in our day and age, the solstice degree would be at that shepherd's crook, if you will, at another time. And I don't think I can put that on the screen. No, it's some other thing that's showing up. It is said that Asur, the one that many of us know as Osiris, and some even believe that Sirius was named for Osiris after he was murdered. Went through the Duat, through the underworld experience, and then became the stars in the sky that most of us know as Orion. Now, I will say that there's something very important in Orion's sword called the Orion Nebula. And if you know the tale of Osiris and Isis, or Asur and Aset, you probably know something about the golden phallus that Thoth or Jehuti magically created so that there could be a child who was Heru or Horus, and that's the sun. And it's a tale I love to tell, but I don't think I will for now. I will just say that Isis, who was the sister of Osiris, yeah, and I mean, even what is that? You know, I pause saying that word. It's like, oh, there goes a few flags on this video, right? Like, how terrible that the great goddess's name has been taken by, you know, modern day war brains and twisted into this organization, right? So Asur and Aset are the older names from Kemet, the land that we now call Egypt. Maybe it's time to take that back. Anyway, Sirius, some say, was Asur, like as a star who travels with her brother, her consort, the king and the queen, the stars we call Orion, and Sirius would be these two who are said to have brought us all civilization, including agriculture, and, by the way, brought an age of peace. And we're going to speak about peace and agriculture and another star, okay? I'm looking at these twins of the sun and the moon, hanging out with the celestial twins who in our day and age reside in Cancer. And if you don't know, the astronomy of the tropical zodiac is very simple. Earth's North Pole is leaning towards that point. And that's why it's above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. It's where the path of the sun, the ecliptic, the heart of the zodiac, is most north of the equator. And The path of the sun, the heart of the zodiac, crosses the equator in two places. One of them is called the 0 Libra, and the other is called 0 Aries. The equinox points are where the plane of day, equator, and year ecliptic intersect. The solstice points are where they are most diverge, and Cancer is the north point. So many sacred systems of ancient wisdom traditions, the signs of the tropical zodiac are directionally aligned. In fact, I will suggest they are directionally defined. So because the moon and the sun met here in this slice of the heavens, this 12 sign 30-degree slice that originates with the north point 0 Cancer, then we see them halfway through that sign. In our day and age, and this will change with precession, let me take you 2,000 years from now, and you'll see that the Cancer glyph is now in the bull. And let's go a couple of thousand years from then, and you'll see that it's with the ram, okay? So this is the precessional effect. This is the turning of the ages. And in our day and age, we're asked to consider how are the twins and the sign of Cancer part of, I'll say, like the meshing of the gears of heaven and the gears of earth that take us through the turning of the ages. And if you know the story of Castor and Pollux, well, it's one of the most beautiful kind of Cancer tales of brotherly love. However, the tales of their sisters, who are Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, like not so sweet, but a lot of Cancer learnings there. I want to say, I think it's somewhat intriguing that at the time of this new moon, we find Mercury here on the back of the crab. In our day and age, the crab lives in tropical Leo. And, you know, I was just, through my inability to spell the word assassination, as I was casting the chart, I learned that how to spell it, which is I nation. And I think that's actually important. Well, interestingly, these are the ass stars. So Oscillus Borealis, the northern ass, Oscillus Australis, the southern ass, and they were called like the asses, the donkeys of heaven. There's a lot of biblical story connected to them, including some called Praesepe, or the beehive cluster here, the manger. And I think maybe I'll just leave that there, except why don't we go to July 13th, at the time of this assassination attempt, and you'll see Mercury and Venus here in Crabland. And then I'm going to go to July 15th, and you'll see Venus is coming very close to Praesepe. In fact, let's move forward a couple of days. It looks like Venus will actually occult Praesepe. Now, we're not going to see it because Venus is so close to the sun that though Venus is now visible after sunset, like this will happen with Venus above the ground for some locations, not here. But it's just too bright out to see Praesepe at that time. However, it's happening. Now, I want to just take a peek. Yeah, I'm using what's called topocentric coordinates here. It looks like for Venus anyway, that's not going to matter. And that's basically true that when in astrology, we're measuring from the center of Earth, it's geocentric. It's that place where all earthlings connect. It's my feeling that the signs actually emanate from the heart of the Earth outwards towards the heaven. At least the terrestrial signs, which would be the tropical zodiac, the celestial signs would be coming to Earth from the heavens. And the turning of the ages is about the meshing of the two, okay? But so it's kind of silly for me to expect any change for Mercury or Venus when I push this topocentric coordinates button here in Stellarium astronomy software, because truthfully, the moon is the only one close enough to Earth for there to be any difference, any noticeable difference between measuring from Earth center, which is geocentric, that's the hole below our feet, the heart of Earth that we all share, versus topocentric, which is surface measurement. Only the moon's close enough, and that's going to be really important when we look to this occultation last night. Okay. Yesterday. So let me go with them. So powerful stars are in this current lunation. We have the new moon on the Sirius degree, and then the first quarter, so moon square sun. right? Which is a waxing half moon in phase, but the first quarter through the cycle, the synodic month, the month of the meeting, synod of the luminaries, moon and sun and earth skies, right? So this is the sprouting of the seed that was planted. So even in yesterday's event, this, July 13th, we might look to the new moon in which this seed was sprouted. Now, Scorpio was rising here in Richmond, California, which means that's not true at all in DC. And I'm not going to spend too much time with that chart, besides, again, reminding you that because this is a new moon at the bendings, this is the moon furthest from occulting the sun. It's furthest from an eclipse experience. And it's at that time that some call the moon wobbles, where I like to say the dragon of the eclipse that preceded this time. That's the solar eclipse in April that was visible here in the United States. And then the coming eclipse season when the sun gets to the south node in Libra, the October eclipse season. This is like the passing of the baton from the previous dragon to the one that follows. In Hawaii, where they have a name for every day of the lunation, right? So many astronomers today and many astrologers, as a result, use an eightfold system of lunar phases. And this would be the time of shifting from the waxing crescent moon to now the waxing half moon, and then another 45 degrees or octile of the zodiac, eighth of the zodiac, to get to the waxing gibbous moon, and then the full moon and the like. I prefer a system of 12 phases to align with 12 whole sign aspects between the luminaries. But in Hawaii, they have a name for every day of the lunation, which alternates between 29 days and 30 days. And it's at this time of moon square sun, whether it's the opening square, so that's the waxing half moon, or the closing square, the waning half moon, and then not just the day of the exact squares, but the day before and day after them as well. They call them the olis. And it's like, give people space. It's definitely not the time for some public appearance. We should be introspective because it's a challenging time. It's interesting to hear that in that Polynesian moon phase tradition, that those delineations are resonant with the astrological image of a square, which is about a tension. And if Libra is a sign of peace, and now it shouldn't be the only one, we have to make all of these signs signs of peace if we want to know peace in our lives. But that Libra is about harmony and balance. It's certainly the right place to start if Libra is the sign of peace, that the square between Libra and Cancer, the square between Libra and Capricorn, the opposition between Libra and Aries, these would be good places to look to know why we're not experiencing peace, these types of tensions. And it's this which is inspiring. I believe I'm going to sit with it a little bit more. I think that this Wednesday, StarryTelling at 11 a.m. Pacific on Wednesday, as it always is, I'll be tuning in with the Astro dice here, doing things like I rolled Libra and a 4. How interesting. The fourth of Libra is Capricorn, or Libra is the fourth of Cancer, to explore some of the relationships between the signs, where we'll speak about aspect theory and the geometries and archetypes. Thanks for keeping me on track, Astro Dice. So first of all, Aries and Libra, they're not opposites, and yes, they are, but really they're two sides of one thing, just like hot and cold are two sides of a thing called temperature. One thing that Aries and Libra are the two sides of is relationship, where Aries is selfness and Libra is othership. Selfness, not selfish. And selfness is necessary to balance othership in a way that we can walk the middle way of right relationship. Well, is Aries war and Mars and Libra Venus peace? Are those two sides of a thing? Self and other. How can we find a balance in that to walk the middle way, which will lead to peace? When's the last time you chose to speak with somebody on the other side? and really try not to bring them to the light, but try to see the light in them. When is the last time that you sat down with, and looked into the eyes of an amazing and beautiful human being, and know that they are amazing and beautiful regardless of whether they drink Coke or Pepsi, or if they know that they're both made of terrible shit and you shouldn't drink that nonsense at all? But can that lead to peace? We might get into some of these squares with Capricorn, but I want to speak about the square between Libra and Cancer today. Between Libra and Capricorn, that might look like the difficulties, because squares speak to tensions, the difficulties in finding peace when Capricorn is government and their rules. Now, Capricorn is not only that, and in fact, until we take back the real Capricorn, which is the Council of Grandmothers, the ancient ones, the elders, the tradition keepers, the stone circle builders, if you will, perhaps these great leaders like Asur and Aset, who came here to bring peace, but they did that through rule, So that doesn't mean it's not going to happen without tension, especially for those who are really strong in that kind of essence of self. I mean, these squares are squares, and the tension is tense. It's about learning to navigate in the atmosphere of tension in a peaceful way. And so, in fact, when we're out of balance, that can also be a Libra thing. All right, so let me show you the stage of yesterday's first quarter moon. It's, by the way, fascinating to see that this lunation, at least in this stage, this principal stage of the lunation, if we fourfold that, it's new moon, opening quarter, the waxing half moon, the full moon, and the third quarter, the closing quarter, the waning half moon would be the fourth harmonic principal stages of a lunation. I like to think of them as seed and sprout and flower and fruit that carries the seeds that must be composted to start the next cycle. Well, the fruit composted, the seeds planted into the soil, right? So let's just look at this time. It was 3:49 p.m., July 13th. I have that cast for Richmond, California, where I'm in the El Sobrante Hills of California, but it's the same place. I'm circling what stellarium is set for here. And so, look at the phase of the moon. I have the moon like supersized, by the way, because it helps that phase be seen. But let's take it to its normal size here. Okay. Well, I want you to notice the star nearby. When I was speaking earlier about the meshing of the celestial 12 and the terrestrial 12, right? The big question is, well, how are the celestial 12 signs defined? So just want to share with you, and if you want to see more of this, you can rewind in my StarryTelling Wednesdays to episode that I called No on 13, where I spoke a bit about Ophiuchus and where this weird 13th sign thing has come from. And I get there a little bit into the three principal zodiacal cosmologies. One would be constellational. Simply put, the constellations are star groups that embrace the ecliptic plane, that embrace the path of the sun. And since our solar system is relatively flat, pretty much that of the planets as well. So what stars do we watch the moving stars, the planetas, move through? And there's a significant issue. There's more than one. Again, that the constellations of the zodiac do not in any way divide the ecliptic into 12 equal slices. The mighty ram of the heavens is 15 degrees of celestial arc. It's like half a sign's worth of stars. where the demure priestess, 47 degrees. So more than a sign and a half's worth of sky. Now you might say, why do you call that priestess and ram? Why not Virgo and Aries? Well, because I like to reserve, as I was taught by Daniel Gemario of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, now the Turning of the Ages Mystery School, and he learned from the Theosophists to use words like twins and crab for constellations and preserve words like Gemini and Cancer for signs, because constellations and signs are very different things. If you, like every astrologer ever, and well, until very modern times, work with a 12 equal sign geometric structure. But even if you do, where do you begin? Let me say one more thing about the constellations before I move on. Who gets to connect the dots? It is entirely arbitrary. In fact, there's no other culture that used the same zodiac constellations that are used today, which were kind of decided upon in 1929-30 by the International Astronomical Union, and many of them like go back to Ptolemy and before. Most of the star names that we speak are Arabic, but things have changed, and again, like, you know, tribes around the world connected the dots in very different ways. It's entirely arbitrary. Stars are celestial. Constellations are terrestrial. Like, that's just how stars group according to our point of view. I always love to ask, what does Orion's belt look like from Betelgeuse, which is Orion's shoulder? Certainly not like three stars in the belt the way that we see them from here on Earth, or here in Sol, right here from our solar system's point of view of our galaxy. It's completely relative. It's completely arbitrary. Okay, so that's the constellational zodiac. Stars are celestial. Constellations are terrestrial. We can then go to a sidereal zodiac, which is a 12 equal sign, 12 equal divisions of the heavens. I'm looking for Geminos's book here because he says it so beautifully. 2,300 years ago, maybe 22, maybe 2000, like this issue with constellation signs, he calls them, and then signs. And he says that the signs of 12 parts, like 12 equal divisions of the solar circle into 30-degree slices or signs, that those can be aligned to stars or to points. Now, for me, he's talking about two very different celestial frameworks. One would be the points, what Earth's axis points to, and that is 0 tropical Cancer, which therefore is why that part of the sun's path is above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. South pole towards tropical Capricorn, Tropic of Capricorn. Aries and Libra equinox, I call them East equinox and West equinox. They're where the planes of year and day, ecliptic and equator cross. It's a very simple, completely terrestrial, or really Earth-Sun system. The tropical zodiac, all about the points, which I feel is Earth's axis, the spine of Gaia, the world tree. If we do this with stars, like pick a star on the sun's path and then divide the ecliptic into 12 equal signs from there, awesome. That's called the sidereal zodiac. Sidereal meaning of the stars. Great. Well, which star do you choose? So that's called the prime fiducial by some, right? Now that is entirely arbitrary. Like, a beautiful thing about the tropical zodiac is, contrary to popular disinformation, it is the only one of these three zodiacal cosmologies that is not in any way arbitrary. It is defined by Gaia's spine, the sword of our stone, the world tree, Earth's rotational axis, which defines Earth's cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. So that the cusps of the cardinal signs in the tropical zodiac are aligned to Earth's cardinal directions. It's like that, and it's not arbitrary at all. Whereas constellations, again, who gets to connect the dots? Completely arbitrary. It doesn't make it wrong. Sidereal, divide the circle into 12 equal slices. Okay, well, where do you start? And that is completely arbitrary. And there's been a lot of debate. In fact, there's tons of different what are called ayam namshas, which have They're basically different sidereal zodiacs for many reasons, but most importantly, deciding which star do you begin with. And many sidereal zodiacs are configured to this star, which is Spica. It's spelled like this, S-P-I-C-A. Some say Spica. In India, Chitra. So like one of the sidereal zodiacs is called a true Chitra zodiac, where 0 degrees sidereal Libra begins with that star. Now, the astronomers know this star is Alpha Virgo. Okay, it's the brightest star of the Priestess constellation, which most call Virgo. But again, I like to see Priestess describing constellation and Virgo describing these 30 degrees between 150 celestial longitude and 180, the equinox point, which in our day and age aligns with the celestial lion. I know these things get confusing, but I wanted to help you understand the importance of the star within the framework of perhaps the most popular sidereal zodiac known. I'm going to bring these stars in here. So let me put the Bohemian stars, because Spica is one of these. You're going to find that in these, in that same longitude, we find the Bohemian star Arcturus. Well, Arcturus, importantly, is like 30 degrees away here, okay? In modern, like extraterrestrial myth, Arcturus tends to get a lot more attention than Spica. But when we see planets traveling at these zodiac degrees, Spica is a very good reference to know where they are in the sky. It's hard to draw a perpendicular line from 30 degrees away. If you've actually worked with the sky outside, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I suggest you go learn. Okay, here I need to use surface orientation. So that's topocentric coordinates. And we're just going to follow the moon. And we're going to let the Earth spin here. And we're going to find that yesterday, moon occulted Spica. And I guess I'm finding out that, well, I might not have seen it anyway, because it seems to have happened. Let me go even a little bit more. Sometime around 10 p.m. Well, frankly, oh wait, no, 8 p.m. And it's not yet dark enough where I live to see Spica. Certainly could see the moon. Like the sun had not yet set here. So I'm not in a place where that would have been visible. Well, let's go to like, I doubt I can put Butler, Pennsylvania on here. Let's just go to Washington, D.C. Okay. And I want you to notice a thing there, okay? We started in California. I put this moon right on the star. I then changed time zones and location, and now the moon's not on the star anymore. What? Welcome to parallax, okay? Or what we call topocentric orientation. Amazingly, the moon is close enough to Earth that when we look at moon, where's a moon? From the Earth, the stars that we see it set against are different if I'm looking from this side of Earth than from this side. Okay. So like California, Washington, D.C., like we're going to see what's called parallax, like that moon is going to shift against the backdrop of stars. So when we have these occultation events, including an occultation of the sun, a solar eclipse, right? You have to be during a solar eclipse, not only on the side of Earth where it's daytime, you have to be on a specific place on Earth or range of places on Earth where the moon with its parallax is visibly between you and the sun. So whether this is happening from the center of Earth where we are all one and where we connect and where we measure astrology from, And I will suggest that that helps us understand that when we are exploring astrology, we are looking into how we experience Earth's experience of the heavenly happenings. And that's very important. It's one thing that I say all the time. But look, I learned that redundancy is built into every good space mission, or else the ship might blow up. So parallax is an imperative factor when you're considering occultations, meaning a planet, a moving star, either covering up another one, and the moon is the one that we typically see occulting things, because moon is like half a degree's worth of space by diameter, where the other beings are little dots, right? And for Venus and Mercury, because they travel so close to the sun, it's very difficult to see Venus or Mercury occulting, especially Mercury occulting stars, because it's going to happen either right before sunrise or right after sunset is possible. And I shouldn't say that's, it's bad astronomy, not right. Like Venus can be in the sky for hours after sunset. Mercury's doing that now. So it's definitely possible, but less likely. The moon is the one, for many reasons, that you're most likely to see occulting other planets or stars. And yesterday, moon occulted Spica, Chitra, which is the origin star for many zodiac cosmologies in our day. I want to share, can you, if I'm like doing this, I guess you can see the little, well, let me share this in a different way. Okay. Back in the day, in the Hellenistic era, the scales were aligned with tropical Libra. Now the scales are like tiny constellations compared to other ones. So you can see back then, like these are the feet of the priestess. And like the first 15 degrees, a couple thousand years ago, were aligned with priestess feet. And then the scales were here. Now in our day and age, Zubin el-Janubi, this star typically drawn these days as the fulcrum of the scales, though it means the southern claw, and this claw of the scorpion. It's at 15 degrees tropical Scorpio. We've almost changed by an entire sign in the turning of the ages since then. In our day and age, Libra is completely blanketed by the priestess of the heavens. For as I said before, these stars from Zavi Java on the head of the priestess to her feet cover like 47 degrees of ecliptic arc, more than a sign and a half. So you see a lot of priestess feet here in tropical Scorpio in our day and age, a bunch of priestess head in the last degrees of tropical Virgo in our day and age. And Zenia, the star here in the shoulder, is about 5 degrees tropical Libra. Porrima here in her waist, 10 degrees tropical Libra. And the star here that we're looking at because of this occultation, 24 degrees tropical Libra in our day and age, as you can see on this chart, July 13th, 2024. So yesterday, Saturn's day, that Spica is at 24 degrees and 10 minutes tropical Libra. Okay. Now the assassination attempt was before the first quarter moon. It was at 6:11 p.m. Eastern. But after this time, we find that the moon occulted Spica, and it was visible, clouds allowing, in Pennsylvania. It was visible, clouds allowing, in Washington, D.C. Well, that's where I have stellarium set for here. And though this would have been the moment at 11 p.m. Pacific is 8 p.m. or sorry, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, that would have been the moment of the occultation of Spica by the moon in local skies. The occultation due to parallax or the surface point of view was later in the East Coast. And let's just move through time here. And we'll find moon covering Spica. Let me even like rewind some, and we'll say, I'm looking at the clock here, like 11:30 until the moon set, okay? But that the occultation didn't end. Let me take the atmosphere away because it bends the moon. Until after midnight, maybe like 11:30 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. Okay, so that was 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. Pacific time. And I know one thing I was doing was trying to find all of the videos I could watch online to see people's comments about this thing and different theories and whatnot, and also to just feel completely disgusted by so many headlines that refuse to call this an assassination attempt. It's like the only reason you could ever say it wasn't is if you want to get into some high-level conspiracy theory about it. I'm game. Let's go. But don't tell me that he fell because of loud noises at the event. That's terrible. And that's going to bring me to the topic at hand. PK says, I thought it was at 3:11 Eastern. That feels like it would make sense by the time of day, but I think I had just looked at the Wikipedia page for what that's worth. It says 6:11 p.m. July 13th near Butler, Pennsylvania. So if anyone wants to correct that, please let me know. Again, I'm not really digging into that chart. So yeah, it says Trump arrived on the stage of his campaign rally at about 6:03 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. About 10 minutes later, at approximately 6:12, shots were fired. Now, I mean, it will be interesting to see if Trump's stance on guns, for example, shifts. I doubt it. But you know, what would be a more convincing happening to change your point of view? Mostly, I'm going to speak about that star. We're going to do a little StarryTelling. And before I do, I guess I'll speak about this Libra Cancer square. And, you know, to get there, let's move through Earth's houses. And this is the root of the so-called natural zodiac, which many of us traditional astrologers or traditional astrology students also kind of push away. But really, as I found with the directional zodiac and this relationship between the planes of day and year being the directional framework for the tropical signs, that because Aries is the place, not the constellation, but the cusp, due east of the center of Earth, where the plane of year ecliptic norths across the equator. Because it's due east of the center of the Earth, it's like a global ascendant, you see, and that's part of the framework of the turning of the ages, thanks to Earth's third motion, which is called axial precession. So that makes the first 30 degrees of ecliptic space tropical Aries, and it's like Earth's first sign. The center of Earth, not California, not Washington, D.C., not wherever you are right now or where you were born, right? So we all have our personal surface experience, and there's also a center experience. So I'm trying to learn this thing that I've taught by also witnessing my baby now, right? That like the first is you come out of the waters of the womb. I'm going to describe this in sign speak, though I kind of try to resist any astrological alphabet teaching, but not always anyway. Let's say Aries, you're coming out of Pisces. You know, look at this. Ohana, what does that mean? Family, amongst other things. And you get the Pisces glyph, which I guess is the company Hurley, but that's why I bought this, because the idea is everyone Pisces and everything is my family and yours. You're all one, which looks like this. Okay. Oh, Anna. How did I never see my partner's name in this shirt before? Fun. Who was born perhaps with one of these signs on the rise. Anyway, we come out of that womb space. I just watched this happen, and it's quite traumatic. And then we come into self, right? That's like coming out of Pisces oneness and the waters of all that is into the fiery self of you. What is that? I always like to say it's symbolized by the cord being cut. I just did that. It was crazy with a lot of prayer and whatnot. Cord was the coolest looking thing ever. Well, actually, my baby's the coolest looking thing ever, but the cord was pretty amazing. So was that placenta with its tree of life. Wild, right? I know many of you have experienced this, some of you quite recently. The cord is cut, and now suddenly we can't drink through the snorkel anymore. We're already having to breathe through our own lungs, right? Like things are changing. Here we are, like I'm a thing, and now the cord is cut and I have needs. Second, right? And from an earth sign perspective, we can think of this as Taurus. Now, it has no consideration for your needs, right? Mom might need sleep. Baby doesn't care, even though the milk might be better if mom gets some rest, you know? Baby needs not only to honor her own needs, and it's very hard for we who have been raised in this place where we were taught that giving is receiving, and therefore receiving is taking, to honor our own needs. Now, I want to just, I'll get back to that. Okay, so how do we learn to express this? This is where the third is born, right? And by sign Gemini. It's expressing my needs, but you see, that births relationship. Because I can scream all day, and if there's nobody there to hear me, then I'm not going to make it. And many of you know this in partnerships, which is, by the way, Libra is born out of Gemini. Libra is the fifth of Gemini. Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, right? And this need to express my own needs so I can be safe, and we'll get back to that. It births relationship. And eventually it births the, oh my gosh, they have needs too. Scratch my back if you scratch yours, you know? That births, by the way, equality and harmony, and that births equanimity. Aquarius is the fifth of Libra. Relationship births community. Community births communication. You see how these things relate? So this Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, now, by the way, in the tradition, since Mars is said to make a home on the opposite side of the world in Scorpio, Taurus is said to be the sign of Mars's exile. Modern astrology looks at Taurus as the sign of the fall for Uranus. So not only is this Mars and Uranus, who when they get together can cause crazy shit anyway, but they're in a place that's like said traditionally to be challenging for them, and they're aligned with what's said literally to be the most challenging star in the heavens. So that some crazy shit is going down shouldn't be shocking, but how do we come through this shock? How can it shock us into coming back from exile, perhaps with the medicine that we found on our strange adventure? That has to come from the heart. So the beautiful thing about Cancer and 4 is, oh my God, I'm a thing. I have needs. Please help. And then somebody does. And we are held, and we are seen, and we are honored, and we are given what we need. And we can feel right then the kind of peace that is known as safety. We're nurtured. And then we can sleep. Right? It's cool. Maya right now, she's 28 days old. Like she's got a lot more language in her sleep than she does when she's awake. When she's awake, she's like, fuck is his place? And the language, it's cool. There's things happening, but oftentimes it's, screaming. At night, there's these coos and laughs and smiles. We're safe in that place. We're safe to explore the entirety of the heart language. And, so the fifth, like Leo, comes out of this, the child divine. You're not just a spark. You're not just a self. Like you're a self with the power to do many things, including going to the farmer's market. And we got to go right now. Hold on just a sec, y'all. Hey, honey. Do you want to go? if we drive? Okay, let's not. Sorry. Baby sleeping, so farmer's market's not happening. So I have a little time to talk starry story. So importantly, Cancer is a place where we feel that safety, but where do we get it? So one of the examples that Daniel spoke about where we can fall into kind of shadow Cancer was like, the street gang that some might join because it's the first place where they ever felt safe. I remember one night I stayed at my friend Jason's house in Vegas where I grew up, and he lived on Donna Street, which if you know Vegas, like was the home of the Donna Street Crips, and it was terrifying, and there were gunshots all night. It's not how it was in my neighborhood at all. And I didn't sleep a wink and was just shocked that everybody in the house did. They were just completely used to it, I mean, imagine growing up in that type of circumstance, especially if there's not a door with a gate out front that locks and all the things, and you're just not safe at all. And so where do you find safety? And many find safety in joining a gang, Safety in numbers, right? I'm just hearing that in numbers might help you think 11th, or some by sign think Aquarius, but it really is a Cancer thing. It's your family who can help you feel safe. But the issue there is what? You feel safe if you hate those people. You get initiated here if you kill that person, right? Like that's how heavy that can get. And Coke versus Pepsi. And if you haven't caught me speaking about that as code for red versus blue, and take that where you will, it's that thing. You've joined a gang who need you to hate your brothers and sisters and help you understand that that's not who they are. They are people of a different family. They're people of a different tribe. They're people of a different clan. We are at war with them. To get to the point where, Biden said the other day, it's time to put Trump in the bullseye, like days before he was shot. And that when folks hear that, they're like, yeah, right? No. So it's very difficult to find peace when you're coming from clan consciousness, right? I mean, some of even the challenge of individuating, like many of us are very blessed to have a privileged experience where parents were like, you can do anything you want to do. I mean, it wasn't told to me that way, but I'm to come from a very blessed experience in many regards, right? But even if you're hearing that, it's typically you can do anything you want to do as long as you do what mommy wants you to do because mama knows best. Right? That's kind of that challenge of the 4 or 5 or the Cancer Leo split in conjunct. And the 5th is where like the next journey starts. We can divide the 12 into 4 quadrants of 3 as we often do. You can also divide them into 3 sets of 4 elemental. And so you're fully elemental through 1, 2, 3, 4. In any whole or equal sign design, if you speak astrology, or in the natural zodiac, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, right? So you're a thing, you've learned your needs, you've learned it's okay to express them. Somebody hears you, helps you feel safe. There you are. And now you awaken as your kind of fully elemental divine self 5. And that sets you on the course out of personal to interpersonal relationship, and kind of the crisis place for that is the Virgo Libra cusp if you're talking natural zodiac, or the descendant, the cusp of the 6th and the 7th, right? I'm me, I can do anything. What is it? I must polish that stone. 6, right? So I can bring it to others. 7, and then 8, I will merge with them. Or perhaps that whole thing is just too much and I'm going to get out of here. The last 4, by the way, transpersonal, spiritual. And also how we connect to community through vocation and others, hopes and dreams, etc. So the Cancer Libra square is a really tricky one. I mean, one of the places it's very much on display is stories like Pyramus and Thisbe, which you may know as Romeo and Juliet, which, by the way, references Pyramus and Thisbe in the play because the Shakespeares, knew what they were talking about and where they were coming from. What was that about Athena and the spear shaker? Tale for another time. Anyway, we really need to be aware, if we want to find peace and harmony, we need to be aware of our clan orientation. We need to know where we're coming from. And we need to not make that determine who we are in the moment and who we can be. Although, of course, like the soil from which your tree sprouts, whether it was completely blessed with good nutrients or arid and whack, like that helped make you who you are. We don't want to turn our back on that. It's a thing I wrote yesterday as I sat down to write my kind of week ahead in the planets today. I was like, I need to talk about this occultation yesterday, and I should have shouted it out before it happened, perhaps. Who cares? So an occultation of Spica. Well, first of all, this star, because many sidereal frameworks start there, it's often could be used for the celestial framework, and therefore when we look at the gears meshing between the celestial, sidereal, and terrestrial tropical frameworks, like that star will be crucial. It really depends on where you want to align a sidereal zodiac. Again, completely arbitrary. Why not start with Regulus? Why not the Pleiades? Actually, you get cusps with both Regulus and the Pleiades if you choose one or the other, and Deneb Jedi, which is another. All those are Bohemian stars. Like that seems to make sense. Why Spica? And there's mythic stories in India about why this star is like a feminine star, and so the energy must be born through that. And so Chitra is the beginning of a zodiac, right? It's a lot of debate. And, having an Ayam Namsha, for example, like having a sidereal zodiac of your choice, it's a very Cancer thing. You might think it's Sagittarius. It's like this pursuit of the truth, and it's the opposite of Gemini, which is the truth that there's many truths. Why not look at all those different frameworks? Because the dawning of the age of Aquarius is going to likely be completely determined by either how you connect the dots of those stars in the sky or where that 30 degrees of ecliptic space falls, depending upon which star you start with. So it's really crucial if you want to look into when does the dawning of the age of Aquarius actually happen? Has it happened? Does that bring peace anyway? They sold me in the song like harmony and understanding. That kind of sounds like the dawn of Libra. Anyway, I want to speak about the star a bit that was occulted yesterday by Moon. And then interestingly, actually in the eastern US, Canada climes would have been the place to have seen this. I saw a web page earlier that shows this. I guess if I looked in California, maybe the sunset and this would have been visible for a little bit, like as the moon was just separating from the occultation. Yeah, this is kind of like PA, Pennsylvania, like DC realm. Thanks to the Astronomical Society of Kansas for having a saxophone in their logo, and also for creating this image. Maybe not that specific, but they're showing some cities. So like 8:32 sunset and ends at 8:44, so that's not enough time, 12 minutes after sunset, to see Spica in the sky. So a lot of these places are not really in the consideration. It looks like Tucson would be. But up here, like Washington, D.C., where we were just looking from 11, I thought 11:30 to 12:30, there you go. And the moon sets at 11:32, so they almost got to see all of it. And I mean, amazingly, this assassination did happen in that place. Now, why would that have anything to do with this occultation? Well, let me tell you, let's rewind time. Actually, let's just go to 3:11 or 6:11 Eastern. And I'm going to take the atmosphere away so we can see this happening as these stars were coming up to the midheaven, right? As I shared before, in our day and age, Zaniah 5 degrees Libra, Porma 10. So the midheaven at the time, at least in DC, is like 7.5 Libra. Wouldn't have been, in PA, would have been Libra at the midheaven too. Well, certainly didn't feel peaceful. But we did have this moon-sun square happening at the time. You know, it's weird when this curvy being, the moon, has this kind of strange straight line. So what about the star? Well, one story I'll tell is that it is the bright star of Astarte, meaning a goddess who was the last to leave us. So it said when humans just fell out of reverence and fell from grace and had no respect for the guides and goddesses and divinity anymore, they split. And that Astarte was the last to leave. And she tried to keep the faith in us and in her family, you know. But we were just too whack. Does that sound familiar? You don't want peace. But it is said that she's still the closest one to us, and she's always watching us, and that she will be the first to return. And that's a story that I hear in Spica. And it's that reason, in fact, that I kind of like this image of beginning a sidereal zodiac with that star. Another very interesting thing is that star was known through different cultures and different places on the earth in different times as a star of agriculture, as a star that we received, you know, in the Greek view, that star, Spica, it's the shaft of wheat that the priestess of the heavens holds. Now, interestingly, the other hand, so Vindian matrix, many show that hand holding the acacia sprig. And maybe you know what acacia can do and where it's mentioned in the old big books and whatnot. But Spica as the shaft of wheat in other traditions here in the place now called the United States, an ear of corn. In other places, a rice paddy, like literally all different traditions through which that star brought agriculture. Now, if you're familiar with one of the ways in the Greek myths agriculture was brought to us, it was by Ceres, right? The goddess of the crop. And, or Demeter would be her name in the Greek, right? And her daughter, Ceres, the daughter of Ceres, Proserpina, or in the Greek, Persephone, who some say went with Pluto, most say was abducted by Pluto and taken into the underworld. And that her mother Demeter journeyed the earth to find her, eventually became the nursemaid to a young prince in mortal guise. And very much like a story that was once told about Asur, you may know as Isis, the first time Osiris was killed by his brother Set, that she wanted to give this child who she had much love for, this mortal prince, the greatest gift of immortality by burning the mortality off of him in the fire. Now that's an intriguing thing even to consider about some of the pain of living here on earth and the trial of these fires that we go through. But anyway, if you know the tale, she's found out just on the last day where the burning would have been complete, and then she reveals her true self, and whether this was on the island of Byblos, which is in the Asur, the Osiris and Isis story, or whether it was in Greece in the Demeter story. Goddess reveals her true form. mother of the prince, the mortal queen, is like, oh my gosh, my queen, I am so sorry. And she's like, yo, I was about to make your son immortal. You shouldn't have stopped me. But in the Demeter story, interestingly, she tells her tale of why she's there and that she's lost her daughter Persephone and she's been looking everywhere for her. You see, she tried to fill that hole where the love for her daughter lives with a love for this young prince. Anyway, it was Triptolemus, who was that prince's older brother, who tells Demeter that he heard Hecate speaking about Pluto abducting the girl. And so now Demeter knew where to look, though she could not go. She went and demanded of the girl's father, who was Zeus, her rightful return, and Hermes was sent to bring her back. Now, there's a very important truth about the pomegranate seeds, and while I'm not going to tell all of those stories, I wanted to bring that in because that star, which is said to be where we received agriculture, could also be, therefore, the star of the gift that was given to Triptolemus by Demeter for him sharing this truth that he had heard about where her daughter Persephone had been taken. And there's a lot in the human experience there. This is the importance of these starry stories, of these old myths. Some ways we're not meant to take them too literally. In other ways, we very much are. But it's important, I would say this, to go learn those stories, read some of the old sources. You'll see that many of them conflict. Learn as many as you can and then tell your version of that story. Don't read it from a page. Do that many times and then speak it, and you will see that that story finds its own version through your expression. And that will be the story as it aligns with your heart, at least at this time in your journey. That has a right, of course, to evolve too. That's what we're here for. We grow through what we go through. How will we choose to grow through the events of yesterday? Well, you have to choose to go through them first. How will we choose to grow through the wars that are happening right now? Avoidance, compliance, whatever it may be, obsession, hatred, vitriol, Coke versus Pepsi, all these things that result. And intriguingly, here's these two figureheads in the United States, where I and many of you reside, and also who are on the news in many lands. I mean, intriguingly, I have to get the story of yesterday's events from Australia. What? Before people in the States would be willing to call a bullet, it seemed. And again, if you want to tell me a much deeper, twisted version of the story, I'll go there. Well, PK always coming with amazing etymology and Greek language and such, and I really need to get educated. Thank you for that. And I need to put on the screen so I can go review this and spend some time with that. PK, do you live in Greece? And then look, PK writes, and red and blue make purple, which is supposedly royal. Yes, let's go into that space. And here's a good question. So do the tropical astrologers suddenly turn sidereal when talking about the Aquarian age and such? No, you can't actually talk about the Aquarian age without both. That's the beauty of it. And it's almost kind of like this thing too. Because of course, I'm very much a tropical astrologer. I very much believe, and you heard me describing the tropical zodiac as a directional zodiac, and only one of these three that's not arbitrary. But to get into turning of the ages mysteries, you either have to look at the tropical signs with the constellations or the tropical signs with sidereal signs, which is the framework that I prefer. But then there's the question of, okay, how is your sidereal zodiac defined? Which star is your prime fiducial? And again, Spica or Chitra is a star that is often used. So a cool thing about, it's like what happens when you mix Coke and Pepsi together. I mean, hopefully that's not what tropical and sidereal astrology are. Hopefully it's a couple different flavors of puer. interesting synchronicity of Ceres and Pluto conjunct in a nativity and gifted a pomegranate tree. And then PK says he's not in Greek Florida, but we can be educated, be global citizens, which is an amazing thing of this time. But does that mean we should want a global governance? Okay, anyway, I think you can take what I just planted and let it sprout in your own soil in whichever way best serves you. Thank you for the present of your presence. I hope I could add a little piece or two to the mix that will help you choose to love someone near you that the TV is telling you to hate. I will see you in space.